What is something Americans consider normal but people from other countries find it disturbing? I just learned this from my roommate who was born in Venezuela, lived in a few other countries, Canada, then came to the US. He said it's illegal for other countries to advertise prescription medications on TV commercials. He was blown away when he saw everything from ED pills to pregnancy meds, allergies, and everything else in between. It's kind of crazy to think about because that seems like a large part of our commercials. Yeah, well, I can only imagine the doctors having to deal with, I heard X medicine is good over and over and over all because they saw an advert on TV. Story 2. The appalling state of workers' rights in the US. Just a few examples. Cashiers being denied seating. Many cashiers are not allowed a place to sit, leading to discomfort and health issues. Health insurance tied to employers. Access to healthcare is often dependent on employment, creating vulnerability for workers. Sacrificing PTO for sick days. Employees frequently have to use their paid time off, PTO, when sick instead of being able to recover without penalty. Minimal PTO. Many jobs offer limited paid time off. Excessively long working hours. Workers often face unusually long workdays. Reliance on tips for waiters. Waiters' livelihoods are largely dependent on tips, leading to unstable income. Active union busting. Large corporations actively work to suppress unionization efforts. Lack of layoff protections. Employees have minimal safeguards against sudden layoffs. Inadequate parental leave. There is no proper maternity leave, and paternity leave is barely acknowledged. No rules against off-hour contact. Employers often contact workers during non-working hours without any clear regulations against it. Story 3. The incredibly crappy American experience of life in general. I didn't get over to Europe until I was in my early 30s. And even as a relatively well-educated and well-read person who didn't take American propaganda seriously at all, I was blown away by the incredible gap between the average European lifestyle versus the American lifestyle. Top-tier public transit, free or very low-cost, high-quality education through university, free healthcare that's generally at least as good as Americans who actually have health insurance get, tons of really excellent parks and urban green space, excellent biking infrastructure, high-quality grocery stores within walking distance from just about everywhere, tons of holidays every year, gobs of vacation time, various worker protections we never even dreamed of, comps that are mostly not trigger-happy sadists, and actually edible food. Honestly, if every American of every socioeconomic class was given a free weeks-long stay in Europe when they turned 18, people would frickin' riot when they got home. Also, most folks from elsewhere are horrified that Americans don't realize how poorly educated they are, like straight up know less about every subject of academic study than the typical student everywhere else. We're like the Hulk without Bruce Banner's smarts, but somehow thinking we're Iron Man leading the Avengers, but the other countries just let us think that, because for the last 100 years we've mostly smashed the things the rest of the world wanted smashed. Story 4. It's been said 100 times on this thread so far, but medical debt and the staggering cost of everything even remotely related to healthcare. I'm only 24, and all my health stuff has cost around $300,000. Luckily for all of my worst issues, I had insurance under my father because I had most of my surgeries and hospitalizations when I was a minor. I'm still having chronic health issues, but I haven't been able to afford health insurance because said health issues have made me incapable of working. Luckily, my husband makes enough to support us both, and a recent raise is allowing him to put me on health insurance for the low cost of $750 a month. Love it here. Story 5. People who have never left their city, let alone country, claiming that it's the greatest place on earth. Like, really? Greater than a place where you don't even have to worry about health problems? Greater than a place you can get all the education you want regardless of your wealth or status? Greater than a place that values all work that needs to be done by ensuring those workers can earn a wage sufficient to live a comfortable life even if that work is considered quote-unquote entry-level or low skill? It seems to me the self-proclaimed greatest country on earth has a lot of issues other countries don't seem to have, and the complete lack of self-awareness is boggling. Story 6. All the salute the flag stuff, medically unnecessary circumcision, user pays healthcare, being very work culture oriented, all the weapon culture in general, classifying eggs as dairy products, industrial scale feedlot meat farming, refusing to use the metric system, calling a grandma Meemaw, calling a pizza a pie, Starbucks, butyric acid and chocolate, really big drinks, gas-guzzling big vehicles, using clothes dryers because it takes too long to line dry washing, eating off disposable plates for quote-unquote convenience, i.e. not due to a mental or physical disability, declawing cats, cropping pit bulls' ears, arming police like the military. Not saying all Americans are like this or will consider all this normal. Take it with a foreigner-sized grain of salt. Story 7. American imperialism, Christian nationalism, and neo-colonialism. Most of the outside, tuned-in world can see America is pretty much a tormentor state and has caused destruction around the world for its own gain, or Western clout. And yet the civilians are led to believe that they are the defenders of freedom and the architects of the new world. I have lots of friends in various U.S. military careers, and they can't get their heads around the fact that they're actively supporting terminating innocence as they view the enemy as a threat. It's extremely hard to deal with that on a personal level. No offense to any American who is aware of the optics, though. Story 8. Medical care and expenses. I live in Brazil. Last Saturday, I was hit by a car while crossing the road and broke my coccyx. In 20 minutes, I was in the ambulance being taken care of and got to the hospital. I had a full-body CT scan, was put in a hospital bed with 24-hour care with a crap load of medication, 4 meals a day, and was hospitalized for a little more than 48 hours. After being discharged, I received most of the medication I will need to take for the next 2 weeks. All of this for free without having any type of insurance. The few medications the hospital didn't cover, I was able to buy for less than $8. I can't even imagine how much it would cost to go through all of that in the USA. Story 9. It may be a stupidly small thing, but credit cards. Where I'm from, we are taught to only use credit cards when absolutely necessary, except for some businesses because sometimes it's advantageous for them to delay payments because they mean debt and you should avoid having debt of any kind as much as you can. We're taught and encouraged to count only our own money. I've learned that the differences exist because 1, we don't have credit scores, so we don't have any reason to acquire debts even if small. And 2, our debit cards are basically identical to US credit cards and conditions. My bank will happily fight any fraudulent charge as if it was its own money, but it never ceases to slightly scandalize me every time I read about someone using a credit card for non-essential expenses. Story 10. There are 2 things for me. Your public toilets having gaps on the sides of the doors and gaps underneath and above. This is disgusting and makes using these toilets kind of creepy and weird as someone can look directly into the toilet and see what you're doing and what you're up to. I also think it's kind of dangerous in seedy places because some weirdo could just stare in whilst you're taking a number 2. It's very unsettling. The amount of TV adverts in general, but mainly how many medical adverts there are advertising some type of medicine or instrument you should be using. HIV medicine isn't something that should be advertised on TV. It should be a specific prescription from a doctor for you. Yeah, those toilet gaps are clearly designed by extroverts, right, who believe every bathroom break is a potential networking opportunity. Story 11. A lack of understanding basic history. I mean, what is taught is extremely biased. It's so disgusting. Americans are also so willfully stupid. To any American who reads this, understand, if you truly believe your country is without fault, if you justify, refuse to acknowledge, or just plain accept the wrongdoings of your nation, you're not a patriot, you are a nationalist, and that makes you the bad guy. History is one of the most important subjects a person can learn, and American schools oversimplify and or teach it completely wrong. It's not surprising Americans believe the load of BS that is the greatest nation in the world. What a joke of a country. Story 12. Having to register to vote. You're of voting age, you should be registered as someone able to vote anyway. When we have elections, I get a personalized pass in the mail that I need to hand over while showing my ID as I vote. And I can walk into any voting station in my city and many others on train stations outside of town. I can decide that I want to vote the morning of the election and actually do it. Requiring you to register sounds to me like a way of shutting out the less predictable part of the electorate just because they can. Story 13. Thinking their country is the best on the planet because America. It's a bit of a supremacist way of thinking and slightly ironic for a country that makes a big celebration out of gaining independence from a colonial power that was also once under the influence of supremacist propaganda and such. And just to add more confusion, that same colonial power outlawed captivity before the US did. Took you guys a full 32 years to follow our lead on that one. You even followed our lead on colonizing the rest of what is now the USA. You only had 13 states when we left you to it, and it was all done on the backs of servants and slaves. You're just as bad as, if not worse than us Brits used to be, kiddo. Don't forget it. Story 14. Food waste. The amount of food thrown away on a daily basis in all settings is absolutely criminal. Take one restaurant like an all-you-can-eat Golden Corral. There are 399 locations that will each throw away a truckload of good cooked food at closing. Now multiply this by school cafeterias, hospital cafeterias, McDonald's, Red Lobsters, etc. all across America for a 24-hour period. Oh, and if you take that perfectly good food and try to feed it to the homeless, you'll get fined by the food police for not having a proper permit to feed starving people. It's crazy. Story 15. Oh, so many things. You guys operate differently in so many ways compared with other Western nations. Some of it is good, but most of it is bad, and what's bad is horrible. Fire first, ask later, if at all. Needless to say, weapon culture in general is frickin' insane. Thinking that shouting, "But I'm an American," in other countries gives you special privileges? The natural assumption is that your Constitution and Bill of Rights give you a free pass? Starting wars, then most often failing to continue them without roping every other international ally in, then screaming it was all your work. Add to that the attempt to change historical events and discoveries through your films. The fact that your paper currency is all green isn't disturbing, but it is freaking annoying. Also, using 1 and 2 cent coins and $1 and $2 notes is both quaint and annoying. Everyone who is not American will say this, but anyway, it's tipping. Screw that. Of course, I can't not mention the healthcare system, but right now it's the inhumanity in how you treat other people who don't fit your new paradigm of belonging, whether they're quote-unquote illegal or not. The country is built on those types of people. Don't promote yourself as the land of opportunity and then complain about those who swallow the propaganda. Story 16. Tips and tipping culture, and as an American, I'm finding it not only disturbing but insufferable at this point. Waitresses should not rely on tips to get paid. I think tipping should be an option, but not an option that will make a waiter feel like if they don't get that tip, they won't have enough for rent, if you know what I mean. Most places have now made it mandatory, which literally is making it impossible to go to places without spending a lot of money. For example, I went to a sushi restaurant. The cost was $24, which was already pricey in itself because this was not some bougie sushi place, and I only ordered 6 pieces of sushi. When I was checking out, the option came up on whether to tip. Because I'm a 16-year-old high school student who doesn't have much money at all, I pressed no. It's already embarrassing and humiliating to know I am declining to help someone, but what was even more embarrassing was the fact that the screen wouldn't change for me to pay, so I clicked again. Nothing. Then again, nothing. I looked that waiter straight in the eyes, knowing that he now definitely knew I was trying not to tip. So then I multiplied my tapping speed. I realized after my friend burst out laughing that I needed to give up because I was not going to be able to get to paying without tipping. So I gave in and tipped. I pressed the cheapest tip you could tip. Tell me why my $24 went to $48.56. There was no custom tip option or any other cheaper option. I just paid myself another 6x California roll without the California roll. Who is doing this? Who is behind this tipping system and culture? Story 17. Last year, I watched a report that mentioned there were more than 350 mass casualty events involving firearms. And the way the anchor said it so, casually, really stuck with me. And then a few days ago, there was another one in Minnesota. There have probably been 5 since then. Americans will either defend, if talk about how important it is to have a gun or blah blah blah. Yeah, we have all heard the reasons. You think that is normal? I guess. Just an unavoidable tragedy that is doomed to take place, though. When I see the latest report of an accident in America, I shrug and ignore it now. America isn't going to try and solve the problem, so I guess we'll just wait for the next one. Oh, before I forget, other me's over at Rufus Stories doing what he does best, unpacking some crazy relationship stories. It's a good time, I promise you. Links in the description below to go ahead and check it out. All right, back to the stories. Story 18. The first thing I think of is your hospitals and homeowners associations, but those are cheap answers. What I find disturbing is your public transport infrastructure. No footpaths, buses are terrible, only 9 cities have an underground metro. You have the best landscapes in the world for high-speed rail, and you don't use it. Your country is designed so that you are dependent on cars or planes to go from A to B, and nobody seems bothered by it. Not to mention that American cars are poorly built crap boxes, but you all still buy them and say they're the best cars ever. Story 19. Over the past couple of years, I've had some friends and family push back doctor's appointments and meds because their insurance wouldn't cover it, or they didn't have enough money. I had a surgery done to remove precancerous cells and they wanted $700 up front, or else I wouldn't have been able to get the surgery. Thankfully, we got approved for financial assistance, but what? Also, I'm a new mom. My baby is 15 weeks now. I was shocked at how little America cares about mothers, babies, and families. My husband had to go back to work 1 week after I had given birth. I had complications during delivery and postpartum. He had to take some days off, unpaid, to be there to help me, while I was still recovering when my complications were acting up. I had to go to the ER multiple times postpartum due to BP rising so high from preeclampsia. My job didn't offer paid leave, and we decided it would be best for me to stay home because if I were to go back to work, we would lose all our new Medicaid coverage. If we didn't have Medicaid, we'd be paying $1,000 a month for health insurance and then $1,000 for daycare. I'd rather stay home with my baby and know that we're safe under Medicaid for any health issues that pop up. It's also freaking terrible. I hate living in America. I'm also now stuck with a $7,000 bill just for giving birth in a hospital. Story 20. That people somehow seem to be completely fine with super sugar added, artificial tastes, mega portions, and neon foods. I was shocked to realize that people weren't just complacent due to the lack of options, but they actively liked it. I think about Skittles, Pop-Tarts, Starbursts, Airheads, and even chocolates. And even the bakeries in small towns that were raved about had strong artificial flavors, and French patisseries like eclairs were blown up to the size of a hand, looking more like a stool with stuffed custard rather than a delicacy that you savor a few bites of with subtle flavorings. I think about how all these food corporations had changed the taste buds of an entire population for the sake of profit, and foods that have more natural ingredients with complex flavors and crafted beautifully and intricately are reserved for the rich. It makes me feel depressed. I love some things about America's convenience like food disposal and central heating, but the junk food chain stores and fake bakeries often remind me that a large portion of American culture boils down to what corporations found convenient and profitable. Story 21. I'm going to echo many others by stating our healthcare system. First off, healthcare is attached to employment. Second, not everyone accepts the insurance you have, so you have to go somewhere in-network for care or get charged up the hoo-ha because they're not a covered facility or doctor. Third, even when you go somewhere covered, you still have to pay. Fourth, pharmacies are also linked to your insurance, so you'll find that someone may say they don't accept your insurance, and then you have to call around to have your prescription transferred. Who wants to deal with this when you're sick? I know, right? The most effective cure in America isn't medicine. It's the sheer exhaustion from trying to figure out what your insurance actually covers. Story 22. Everyone's already brought up everything that came to mind for me, but I just want to add how weird it is, as an American who has mostly lived abroad since 2009, just how committed some Americans are to everything wrong with the country and society. When I left the USA, I had an inkling that a portion of Americans were kinda insane, but a decade and a half of life in other countries has made it much clearer just how bad the problem is. Now, to be clear, still lots I love about where I'm from, and I believe most Americans are just fine as people, but holy crap, the ones that are messed up are really, really, really messed up. Story 33. The lack of pavements, sidewalks is a significant issue. Outside of major cities, pedestrian infrastructure is often non-existent. Even where it does exist, it can randomly disappear. For example, you'll be walking along a road and the pavement will just stop. To get anywhere in the States, you must drive. Even in towns, two side-by-side businesses may not have a single method of walking from one to the other, yet both will have their own drive-thrus and parking spaces. Even more frustrating is when those individual businesses don't even have a way of driving from one to the other. Instead, you have to go back out onto the main road and then circle back into the next parking lot. There's always a curb or knoll in between preventing you from just hopping across. Back home, I can walk all the way from the city center to my house without leaving the pavement, without having to step into the road, and without going anywhere near a freeway. That's a 2-hour walk out of the city to the village I live in. I could walk even further to the next town over without even going near a main road. If I don't want to walk, a bus can take me to the exact same route. I just crossed into Canada and immediately noticed an increase in pavements and walkable towns. The absolute necessity of cars in the States is evil. Story 24. Worth it to mention a fair of the disturbing things in America ties to bigotry colliding with a diverse country. Most racist or xenophobic countries, 1, have homogeneous populations, and 2, commit terrors away from the home country. Because America hosts both bigots and the targets of said bigotry, also policy focuses inward. In particular, the rich here figured out early that people will give up helpful benefits if those benefits are shown to help immigrants or other quote-unquote wrong groups of people with the quote-unquote wrong values. Thus, the rich get richer. Story 25. Food, and I'm surprised nobody else has mentioned it, and I don't mean the portion sizes, which alone are absolutely despicable. I just mean the general quality of food. As a European, American meals and almost every single foodstuff I have ever eaten when I've been over there is truly sickening. No actual person should be consuming that stuff, let alone in the most prevalent and so-called advanced nation in the entire world. Maybe I was eating in the touristy, fast food-based areas, perhaps, but even then it was unforgivable. Secondly, American politics is an actual horror story. I cannot believe that Donald Trump was able to serve 1 presidential term, let alone 2. No matter your political leaning, I refuse to believe that you can listen to what that bumbling idiot has to say about literally anything and then not see through his facade. He's an actual caricature. And that's just the president alone. The whole political system in America is doomed to fail and prop up the rich. Same as basically every country, of course, but in the US, it is so blatant and in your face that I find it actually frightening and honestly really disturbing. Third, the CIA. I don't think I need to elaborate on that. Everyone collectively knows what I mean, albeit most American citizens would probably be disgusted by their Secret Service if they knew or researched the full extent of its evil. And if you're learning a thing or two from this video so far, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos just like this. Story 26. I was born in America but grew up overseas. I went back to America for high school and was super disturbed by the obsession with sports. Maybe I just lived in a small town with nothing to do, but people were shoving toddlers into travel baseball teams and making them get up at like 5 a.m. to travel states away to play sports. These kids have no social lives, no hobbies, and are taught that their worth comes from athletics. Whether it be competitive dance, cheerleading, baseball, or basketball, or football, it consumes all of your after-school time, weekends, and even forces you to skip school. I heard stories of 13-year-olds having to get surgery for injuries due to years of overplaying. It's ridiculous. Story 27. Tipping culture. It's so violent. What's with that? If you can't afford to tip, then you can't afford to eat out mentality. Sounds like a pyramid scheme. Healthcare being unaffordable or shark-like. Why would you ever receive a bill for a skin-to-skin contact from your baby delivery? That sounds like a Simpson episode. Pledge of Allegiance every morning. I've seen that in movies and TV shows, but also from people who went on student exchange, and they say it's real and very spooky. Segregation. Like, yes, I know it's illegal, but still, as foreigners, it's obvious how the USA still likes to divide everyone by race, or rather what they look like. For example, creating a Latin music category in award shows to not have them in main categories, going as far as to create a Latin Grammy or some crap like that. Same with the K-pop category when any Korean or Asian artist releases music, even if they have Western collaborations and the song is in English. In general, everyone likes to divide POC into groups apart from white-looking people. Food portions, it's plainly disturbing to watch. Like, why so much? Why would I drink so much soda? Sharing rooms in college, you are telling me you are in crippling debt for thousands of dollars and you are sharing rooms with a stranger? LOL. Story 28. Not including tax on the price tag, but only sometimes, so you never know how much you're going to pay. I understand the reasoning behind it. It's stupid, but I get it. But it's still madness, and it's not like the tax is a flat 10% or something easy to calculate. And to add to that, still having pennies and $1 bills that look the same at first glance as bigger bills. And of course, the weird taxes mean that nothing is a whole number and nothing gets rounded because you still have freaking pennies. You can have a wallet absolutely full of cash and coins and still have basically no money. Story 29. Being greeted in shops and people coming up to you to sell things in malls. I went to America a few months ago for the first time, and every time I walked into a store, someone would say, "Hi, how are you today? Is there anything I can help you with?" It was so awkward, like, let me shop in peace. I was also going through a mall and there were market-type stalls set up in the walkways, which is fine, but when I would walk past them, the people working at them would literally walk up to me and say something like, "Hi, do you want to try this soap? It's really good for acne," and stuff like that. One of them actually told my mom that their cream would get rid of her under-eye bags. Like, how insulting is that? Why do they feel the need to point out our appearances and claim they can fix them and straight to our face? We'd have to either ignore them for them to go away or say no thank you, but they just follow you and keep pestering you about it. Another thing I noticed about America is how intense their TV advertisements are. Every advert has people actually yelling into the camera to buy their product or watch that show. Everything on it is so bright and in your face. While I'm on the subject of adverts, about 90% of them are for different types of medication. No kids' toys, no household appliances, just medication after medication. I had heard of Ozempic briefly before going to America, but I assumed it was something that you either got prescribed or bought for a lot of money. I saw an advert for buying it over the counter for cheap. It's actually baffling. Story 30. You have to decide if you can afford the cost of the ride to the ER in the ambulance. Our medication is not reimbursed and costs a staggering amount more. So when people vacation in other countries, since the trip and meds together are still cheaper. Americans do not seem to understand that the taxes they complain about paying for a welfare system only really help the top 1%. We think you have high taxes and pay out of pocket for all medical, school, and social nets? I am sorry. Lastly, because I could go on and on, Americans think that everyone is jealous of how many weapons are here, and if even a peep is made about how pathetic and truly dangerous this makes the masses, well, apparently everyone needs the policing and care of this ammo-sexual and borderline illiterate country to make you all have the same freedoms. Story 31. I've been working in the US for a couple of years. I went back home after a while and had a long transit before my next flight. I'd booked an airport transit hotel inside the airport itself. I really wanted to have tea from this chain that I love, but the place was right outside the airport and they didn't have an outlet inside. The guards advised me against stepping out for it because that would mean I'd have to lug my luggage 2 floors up and then go through security again to get into the airport and go to the hotel. I was pretty sad about it, and I guess they noticed. One of them told me to wait there, went up to the place I liked, and brought someone with him from there. This person came up to me, was so happy to hear that I love this place, and took my order. He came back in about 15 minutes to give me my order and apologize for the delay. Now, the cherry on top, as I was paying him, I thought I'd tip because they had all been so nice and sweet to me. They refused. They said that it was their honor to serve people and give joy in this way, and they couldn't accept it. I realized that would never have happened in the US. Story 32. Was recently talking to someone from Europe about this, and we eventually came to the conclusion that turning 18 as an American is just crazy. You gain the right to vote, but also if you register to vote, you're then compelled to serve on a jury if you're asked, and it will happen at some point. You also need to sign up for selective service, the draft, if you're a dude, or else you'll never ever be able to work a job that's even tangentially related to the federal government. Plus, you're now considered an adult for all government purposes. But you can't drink and you can't smoke unless very specific circumstances apply. Also, all of a sudden, your car insurance is more expensive until you turn 25, even if you've been driving since you were 16 and have never had an accident or even so much as a parking ticket. Story 33. At least in my experience, the overly individualistic tendencies of a lot of Americans perturb me. I feel like Americans won't give forgiveness or kindness to their family or community just because they're not obligated to do so. Whether it's refusing to give up your seat for an old person, or the tendency to hate babies in public, or the fact that so many Americans will cut off their families because mom wasn't a perfect parent. I get it, there's a limit to how far your generosity and forgiveness can stretch, but the general attitude I've seen is that Americans will give as little kindness as possible to the people around them just short of being complete schmucks. I just don't see a lot of strong family or community values here. Story 34. Eating actual food for breakfast, the sole idea of having a fork in my hand at 9 a.m. would feel so weird. Wearing pajamas to sleep, I don't think I ever saw adult pajamas outside Hollywood movies. Dining at 6 p.m., that's the time for cookies and chocolate milk, not dinner. Wearing shoes inside the house, I'm not even Asian, but the most satisfying part of the day is coming home from work and taking off my damn shoes. Don't they have slippers or something? Real Christmas trees instead of plastic ones? They assume everyone has or will have a car. Is there any American who simply doesn't like to drive? I've heard that there aren't even bus stops in certain areas. Cameras in every room, filming all day. Like why? And where do they store all those gigabytes of video? Story 35. Lack of free healthcare. I'm so glad I was born in France. I had to be hospitalized for 1.5 years due to severe depression, and it cost me and my parents a whopping €0. Been medicated for 5 years, and probably for a long time for now, €0. Gastroscopy for my esophagus issues, €0. The very concept of free healthcare allowed me to live a somewhat normal life. I'm thankful for every French person that fought for this, and I will fight for it to remain like that. Story 36. Health being pay to play. People Uber to the hospital because they can't afford an ambulance and avoid emergency rooms because even with insurance, it's such a pyramid scheme. Medical debt is so common. I've had insurance decide I didn't need a medication, which led me to going out and being revived. This then led to further physical and obviously mental issues, and the cost of that hospital stay could have bought me a house. I still had to get referrals and fight for them, fight for medications. It's such a crap show. I worked for a health insurance company for a short time and had a woman call because she didn't understand why her husband's cancer medication was suddenly not covered. In looking and asking other people, I had no answer for her and it made me angry. I left that job not only because it was a crap show, but they also expected me to use PTO for therapy appointments instead of working slightly later to make up for the half hour. Story 37. I've got quite a few less mentioned ones here. Health-wise, the amount of times people in the US see a doctor. Checkups don't exist in the UK, as far as I'm aware, may be different if you are 60 plus or not using NHS. From what I've seen online, people in the US will go to a doctor for a high temperature, etc. I've even heard of kids being off sick from school with symptoms that seem easily diagnosable as the common cold. In the UK, you could retch that morning and still go to work or school. The amount of healthcare/skincare products, medication, etc. that is also so accessible. Many products that are on the shop floor in the US are banned in the EU and UK due to not being proven safe. It also seems so easy to get meds prescribed, whereas in the UK, I believe you have more standards to meet, and quite often doctors will expect you to try other things first. Also, on that topic of products, the amount of chemicals and ingredients that are in food. Have you seen the list of ingredients in ketchup in the US versus the UK? And Fanta being a completely different color in the UK and EU? The quality of buildings. The US builds houses out of essentially cardboard. It's normal to hear into rooms, etc. Most houses elsewhere are made from much sturdier materials. On the topic of houses, the concept of having quite a bit of land and garden. I'm not sure if this is just a UK thing, but Americans seem to have such large houses and still have a large garden. For context, in the UK, there are 279 people per square kilometer. In the US, it's 36. So I suppose they have a lot more land to work with per person, and I am aware there are some uninhabitable areas in the US. Story 38. So this is my moment to find capitalism normal and ethical, to pay to study or receive treatment or contract almost several €100,000 just to go to university, to have elected Donald Trump a second time, the culture of tipping, to have no or almost no restrictions on food products, no laws protect you, which is so serious. Afterwards, it's because you pay for your health yourself, so it's not surprising. Honestly, from the point of view of a Western European, your supermarket aisles are scary to see. Liberalism pushed to the extreme in your country. The fact of going to people's countries with the sole excuse of establishing democracy, and the impression that these are always countries either with resources or with oil. Also, sorry, but democracy is not the ultimate political system, just in case some countries with systems opposite to yours are better than you. And honestly, lots of other things. Story 39. The fake happy faces everywhere. It's like Stepford Wives. I never knew it was that bad until I had a friend from Europe visit me in the States. I've also heard it from the people in other countries I've visited. It's also particularly disturbing to them when they see two strangers suddenly drop the mask and get out of nowhere like they have split personalities. It's a lot easier for me to see it now that I haven't lived in the States for over 10 years. I realize that most people outside of the States don't want that Stepford grin, and they actually get suspicious and uncomfortable if you just smile at them. It was for sure a culture shock, but I've grown to love it. People are rarely fake with you, and you know they would never say something just to be nice. It's a lot easier to tell who actually likes you, tolerates you, or hates you here, Spain currently, for reference. Spanish people are some of the kindest and friendliest people in the world, also the scariest if you get on their bad side. It's also cool, like you and your doctor are just allowed to openly hate each other, but everything stays professional. You get the treatment you need, they get paid. It was scary at first before I started slapping back. Now it's refreshing, really. Like with any generalization, I'm not speaking for all Americans or only Americans. I did, and do still, have that problem. For the most part, the places I visited don't mind showing their resting witch faces, gender-neutral term in my mind. There are some places like Mexico and Japan where they do put on a front, but it's very different than the Stepford Wives American accent. For example, in Mexico, they do camp it up and get buddy-buddy with you really fast, like in the States, but they also very quickly show the whole range of emotions. Americans seem to be stuck in a really black or white mentality. Japan is another country where people need to put on a mask to fit in. It's more low-key, polite, and diplomatic, though. You see a lot more neutral or frowning Japanese people in photos than you do Americans. They are also more shut off and harder to get to know. Story 40. Shouting and whooping whenever there's a camera. I'll never ever understand it. Walking down the street normally, see someone with a camera on, immediately put their hands in the air and go, "Woo, yeah, baby!" And then maybe shout the state or city they're from. Closely followed by throwing random hand signs that mean nothing to anyone while they do it. "Woo, baby, yeah, baby, woo, Detroit, baby, yeah!" While throwing in the hand in a V shape. This can be a guy shopping or walking down the street or waiting in a queue. It gets a million times worse at sports events when everyone else does it. But it's weird, Europeans don't do that, but the atmosphere and songs at sports events are a million times better in Europe than America. Yeah, baby, woohoo. Story 41. Blatantly paying for people who disregard minimal self-care that could prevent health issues that Medicaid pays. People like smokers and most obese folks. They're also inconveniencing other people in a more direct disservice manner with their secondhand smoke and crowding people, etc. I used to think maybe as expensive as smoking, it would deter people, but it doesn't. Blah, 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 etc., etc. Nothing ever changes. I know someone who had dental surgery paid for by the state when he'd been given numerous forms of assistance to stop doing what contributes to his poor dental health, but he didn't, so we shouldn't pay for it. Story 42. Yeah, I have to admit I find the banking system in the US to be a bit odd. I have an American bank account with a small credit union even though I live in Ireland because I'm married to a US citizen. I needed to transfer money to a different bank and couldn't, for the world, figure out how to do it. Turns out I had to subscribe to a third-party service for $5 a month to get access to intra-bank transfers. In the EU, you just log on to your online banking, enter an IBAN, and hit send. The money would be in the recipient's account probably immediately or no later than the next morning. Another weird thing I've noticed is how brutal banks are when you do something wrong. For example, if you go unauthorized overdrawn in an Irish bank and don't take steps to rectify it, it could be months before they close your account. In the credit union I'm in, you have 5 days to fix it or your account is closed and your details are passed to a collections agency. And that troubles me because you could have a very short-term period of financial difficulties and then you could be left without a bank account because of it. But I think the craziest thing I've experienced is when our credit union was absorbed into a slightly bigger credit union. We were given new account numbers, debit cards, and all the details were changed, so we had to basically set everything up again as if it was a brand new account. That wouldn't be tolerated in Europe. If one bank took over another, then the process would have to be completely seamless for customers. Story 43. I'm American and worked closely with folks from England for a while. The biggest difference was they thought Americans way overshare. When we were discussing self-image once, another American mentioned she'd had an ED when she was younger. That was it, no other details. I thought nothing of it. When she wasn't around, they told me how uncomfortable it made them and they were shocked at how personal that was. I was floored. They should hear my friend groups talk about GYN visits. LOL. Story 44. From what I've heard from folks from out of the country, small talk. Apparently, it's not really normal in other places for strangers to just say hi to each other or engage in small talk while doing things like standing in line. After accidentally bumping into each other at the store, noticing that someone is interested in the same thing you are, things like that. Apparently, a lot of people compare Americans to golden retrievers and say they're ridiculously friendly because Americans will just talk to anyone without any formal introduction. Story 45. Mind you, I'm not sure this is still as prevalent, but the Pledge of Allegiance, first thing in the morning, in school, it weirds me out. I know it's voluntary in most places now, I believe, but that practice has always given off super strong indoctrination vibes. Being patriotic in and of itself isn't a bad thing. There's a difference between loving your country, patriotism, and ignoring any faults that it might have, which is something closer to nationalism. The line isn't always very distinct, and the two concepts are often confused for one another. Patriotism, untempered by critical thinking from the individual, turns into nationalism. To me, the wording towards the end of the pledge, keeping in mind that this may very well be subject to misinterpretation on my part, a discussion that I am open to and a view that I will happily accept constructive criticism on, I pledge my head and my heart to God and my country, makes it seem like the reciter should forego their individualism and always place themselves secondary to the interest of institutions infinitely mightier than themselves. This is certainly applicable sometimes, and I don't mean to try and take anything away from those who have sacrificed so much in service to their country. I have nothing but respect for them. My issue lies with the ease by which this could be abused when you're told from a very early age that when duty to your country calls, you're meant to answer, regardless of your own personal apprehensions. Story 46. Kids consuming your entire life. I'm Southern European but lived in the US for a long time, and children in America act like complete demons compared to the kids in my country, LOL. I think Europe makes it easier to include children in everyday society, and America doesn't give any support to children or parents, so kids end up being socialized, kind of isolated from society besides daycare and immediate family. This doesn't prepare them to be able to function appropriately, and raising kids to be highly individualistic and pander to seems to be the norm in the US. My American friends have zero social life outside of their children, but my friends in Europe with kids still maintain friendships and hobbies unrelated to parenthood. And if any of these stories got to you, here's more for you. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. I'll catch you in that video.